Counter-Narrative News, bringing you daily news today on Friday the 19th of May 2023. President Assad of Syria has finally been readmitted properly at the Arab League summit currently taking place. He has been out for more than 12 years as a result of the largely Western and Western allied back in the region death squad operation to destroy the Syrian government and state. However, Syria itself has increasingly adopted its own far-right racist political culture. And whereas President Assad says at the Arab League that, quote, the past, present and future is Arabism, end of quote, it's quite interesting because Syria, when has Syria been Arab nationalist? The Syrian state joined in the Western aggression against Iraq in the quote-unquote First Gulf War. And Syria has really rescinded back into a right-wing Syrian nationalist, not Arab nationalist posture. However, of course, it's going to posture with this so-called Arabism as it's admitted back into the Arab League. Mohammed bin Salman, the leader of Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, said at the summit, quote, he is not going to allow the region to turn into a field of conflicts, end of quote, which is extremely laughable, because Saudi Arabia itself is a close colonial client state of Britain and the US and France. And all of those welcoming back President Assad and Syria into the Arab League were themselves absolutely committed to incredible amounts of supremacist and sectarian destruction, not least in the NATO-led conflict of destruction in Libya, of the destruction of Yemen, of the destruction of Syria itself. Now, where does this leave the some 6 to 9 million displaced within Syria and the many more made refugees as a result of the war who've been weaponized both by Turkish political leading class of Erdogan and the opposition, have also been weaponized in a far-right racist posture by European states, not least the far-right British Tory regime? It's just a sad state of affairs which points to the fact that the Arab world and the region has been devastated decade upon decade upon decade, its capacity reduced to a very negligible level, and now Syria is just an easy plaything, having allowed itself, through Russian facilitation, to be bombed by nearly every single superpower in the world, including Putin's formal invitation and formal infrastructure to bombing Syria together with the entire NATO leadership. Going over to Havana in Cuba, Russia is concluding a 150 strong person trade delegation that is seeing, year upon year, in the last several years, trade between the two states increase exponentially. This is welcome news for the sanctioned and besieged socialist state of Cuba, which is looking to improve many facets of its economy and commerce, not least in the sugar industry in which the Russians are investing, including connectedly the production of rum and also other tourist infrastructure. However, the more problematic side of this, of course, is that the Russian leadership, along with Western states' leadership and nearly every major state in the world, is still depositing a toxic racism and capitalist colonial type of culture across the world. And this can only but have some influence on the Cuban Communist Party, which is the ruling party in Cuba, and its leadership. Indeed, while Cuba has made some relative progress since the 80s on the questions of African Cubans and racism within Cuba, it's still very much an ongoing and live issue. Nevertheless, this all being said, one welcomes any chance for the Cubans to develop their economic capacity, as they are really the only inspirational state left in the world when it comes to the people's power in a revolutionary sense against imperialism and in the direction of socialism. But still, nevertheless, one has to be critical-minded about all these different issues and aspects in relation to this. The son of Afrobeat pioneer and Nigerian radical activist Fela Kuti, his son Sean Kuti, has been released after being arrested by Nigerian state and police for evidently slapping a police officer on a motorway in a confrontation. Sean Kuti is leading a renewed movement which his father first started, called the Movement of the People. Sean Kuti's father, Fela Kuti, was himself the son of a leading revolutionary activist and women's rights activist, Fumileo Ransom Kuti. Back in the 70s, actually in 1970, Fela Kuti founded the Calcutta Republic, which declared itself independent from the military dictatorship of Nigeria. The commune itself was destroyed in a 1978 raid that injured Kuti and his mother in a humiliating fashion. There was demands that Sean Kuti to be kept in custody for questioning for many weeks. This was rejected, and it's interesting that Sean Kuti was released within 48 hours, perhaps indicating to the fact that Sean Kuti has a sizable following in Nigeria and across Africa, and perhaps the Nigerian authorities are somewhat little bit anxious that being seen to really repress Sean Kuti might spark some social uprisings of the Nigerian people, and that wouldn't be surprised. And the Nigerian people are kept in an absolutely devastated, exploited and oppressed state by the Nigerian state, which itself is basically a client state of Britain and the US and other leading former colonial powers, and especially the petrochemical companies, not least BP and Shell, which continue to devastate the land, especially of the Niger Delta, creating many illnesses and early deaths there. That's Counter-Narrative News, bringing daily news today. We wish everyone a fantastic weekend and a Jummah Mubarak and happy Friday. Please continue supporting us by encouraging your networks to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter at @counter_CNN. Before we go, actually we have to say a big salutation, because on this day in 1890, Ho Chi Minh was born, and on this day in 1925, MalcolmX was born. They were both leaders in the struggle against colonialism and neo-colonialism, travelled the world at the feet of solidarity with revolutionary forces and learning from them, and remain absolutely forefront examples of what humans should aspire to in that self-sacrificing service to humanity for liberation against white supremacy, racism and colonialism. Many thanks.